And welcome to Shamrock Sports on the second floor of the Duncan studio. The triumphant return. Our long national nightmare is over. John Horlander is back on the set. Rooney, where'd you find him?
He was tucked away in some closet somewhere, and I had to pull him out.
Yikes.
I was in Soren.
The home of Austin Rooney and our great producer, Anthony Rio. Welcome back. Tell us what's been going on, why you've been away for like a month, why you ditched us, and what's been happening.
I'm so glad to be. I missed you. I missed him a little bit more, but I miss you both equally.
Sure. Okay. I'll try not to be too offended.
I was working on the Keenan review. All you Notre Dame folks, I'm so glad you got to see the Keenan review. I'm back, ready to talk about Notre Dame basketball, Notre Dame women's basketball. Arike Ogunbowale, major shout out, congratulations, top scorer of all time. We got a lot to talk about, and I'm really excited to be back.
We do, and we will get to all that and more. Shamrock Sports starts right now.
Hello, I'm Father John Jenkins, president of the University of Notre Dame, and thank you for watching Shamrock Sports.
All right, Notre Dame men's basketball has had a confusing past week. They go on the road last Saturday against Virginia, one of the best teams in the country, a great defensive team, and they play them to the last minute, loss of 60-54. Remember earlier in the year when Virginia came to Purcell Pavilion and completely blew the Irish out of the water. They started off up 12-0. Coach Bray said after they took our heart away. This game was quite a different story. Notre Dame actually had a decent shot to win the game. They cut it to within 2 with about 30 seconds left. They end up losing. And then they come back on Tuesday night. It was the office night against Wake Forest, who had 2 conference wins coming into the weekend. And we'll get to the highlights now, but it was just one of those puzzling losses for the Irish against Wake Forest. Apparently, Stanley, this guy from The Office, likes pretzels, so he was out there throwing pretzels around.
Did you watch The Office,
like Johnny? No, not really.
No, I've seen it enough times, I think, for all three of us. I've seen it probably about 15 times all the way through. So it's okay if Johnny's never seen it because
I've never
we
seen
can
it
handle the
either.
references.
I've seen clips here and there.
Okay, 75-68 was the final score. Let's get to the highlights from Purcell Pavilion. Both teams actually got off to a really good start. Prentice Hub here, top of the key, gets by 2 defenders. He's got a big upside. He's seen a lot of valuable minutes this season as a freshman.
He's one of the most improved players in the team.
How about TJ Gibbs from Mishawaka? Drains it. He finished with a season-high 23.
Yeah, Gibbs averaging 20 points over the last 3 games, shooting 37%. He's really caught fire here recently, which is what the Irish needed.
Jalen Horde with the mid-range J. I mean, I can do that. Basically an open shot from the free throw line. And then how about the old pick and roll? Simple basketball. Horde finds Sar for the jam. Both teams shot about 50% in the first half. Sar squeaks by Jawan Durham and is able to get the and one.
Yeah, and I don't think it's fair to critique this Notre Dame team and say that it was a radical change from what they did against Virginia to what they did against Wake Forest. I think Wake Forest shooting 50% really contributed a lot to that. But I think you look, the main difference, Notre Dame defended really well against Virginia. They defended the 3 well. They held Virginia to under 35% shooting. Wake Forest at 50%. It's tough to win when you just let the other team score at will like Wake Forest is doing in the first half.
Wake moving the ball up by 1. Brennan Childress, the step back 3, all 3 of those right in Mooney's kitchen. Childress had a huge game for the Deags.
Nearly a triple-double.
Goodwin loses the handle. Sharon Wright Jr., come on, man. Show us a little mercy. It's been a tough season.
Tough season for them, too, though.
Deags bench loves it. Irish within 4 down the stretch. Childress, again from range. He finished with 20 for the Deags. And Wake Forest just went on a hot streak shooting. Hub finds Mooney in the corner as he crosses the mid-court stripe. The Hub-Mooney connection worked well, but it wasn't quite enough for the Irish.
And this is a huge turning point right here in the game. Notre Dame managed to cut it. They tied the game here with 2.5 minutes left, and just down the stretch, couldn't seem to put any points on the board. They were outscored 9-2 in the last 2.5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, Horde backs in against Leszewski there to put Wake in front. Next possession for Wake. Saar gets the J to fall. Wake goes up 4, and that is all they would need. TJ Gibbs, next possession for the Irish. Can't get the 6-point shot to fall here, just inside the half-court line. And after playing UVA close until the final minute on the road last weekend, they dropped the home matchup to Wake Forest. Again, as I mentioned, just 2 conference wins for the Deacs coming into the game, now 3. But you got to give them a ton of credit. They shot just a hair under 50% for the entire game.
No, don't get me wrong. Wake Forest shot incredibly well, but that also falls on Notre Dame to tighten up defensively and not give Wake Forest as many open shots. We saw the guys who were hitting their shots. It was Brandon Childress, Olivier Saar, and Jalen Horde. So the 3 of them were the 3 top scorers, and Notre Dame failed to shut them down in a big way. I don't think Childress missed more than 1 shot all game. So it comes down to tightening up defensively against someone like Brandon Childress, and they didn't do it. That's why they lost.
Yeah, Childress was 5 of 7 from the floor and had 20 for the Demon Deacons. Olivier Saar, 6 of 8, had 14 points. And this was kind of one of those games that you thought, hey, you know, despite the fact that they haven't won that many games this season, here's a good chance for a home win. And after playing a close game last Saturday against UVA, they just came back and dropped them.
It was a must-win game as far as I was concerned. Again, I was talking a little bit optimistically.
Well, must-win in terms of what? I mean,
in terms of, look, if they're looking to go on a run, go on a run.
They're not going to make a run to the tournament.
No, I'm going to agree with Austin here. I think that Notre Dame, if they wanted to have a chance of making a run at the NCAA tournament, this was a game that they needed to win to make it easier for themselves. They have 5 games remaining, the next 3 all against teams in the top 20. So I think that this was the game that you really needed to establish a momentum to get things going. That win against Georgia Tech seems so far in the past now, even though it was just 3 games ago. The tough loss to Virginia really just sucked a lot of energy out of it. You were right there. You had a chance to pull the upset, and it was snatched away from you at the last minute. They did such a good job defending down the stretch in that one. I think Virginia didn't score for the last 5 minutes of that game until the very end when they were shooting some free throws. And then you look at Wake Forest. I think the real story of that game was Wake Forest's ability to knock down shots in the first half. Wake Forest went into the half with nearly 50 points. They really didn't do a great job offensively in the second half. It was Notre Dame's inability to figure out a rhythm defensively. They went to 3-2, they went to 2-3, they went to man-to-man, and every single time it seemed like somebody just managed to get open. And a lot of times it was a guy like Childress who's going to knock it down 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, Irish had a 1-point lead going into halftime, but just couldn't sustain it, despite the fact that Notre Dame in the first half shot 51%.
No, they did, but I think the important note is how well Notre Dame shot at the beginning of the game, because they went on a run. They were shooting 75-80% over the first 5 to 10 minutes of this game, and then they really cooled off in a big way, and they went back down to, you know, their average this season. They probably shot under 40% for the last 30 minutes of that contest. You're not going to win many games if you're not even leading when you're shooting 75 or 80%, which was because Wake Forest also came out shooting exceptionally well in the first half. So both teams started off shooting well, and Notre Dame was unable to really take a lead and hold it.
So we talk about bright spots that we can take in this season that hasn't been great for the Irish. One of them is TJ Gibbs, who had 23 on Tuesday night, 8 of 12 from the floor, showing flashes and potential of what he can be for Notre Dame. Maybe we thought it would happen sooner this season, but I think we're starting to see a little bit more of that, and maybe what kind of upside he carries for the Irish into the offseason for next year.
Yeah, when I think, you look at the talent that TJ Gibbs possesses individually and the talent that John Mooney possesses individually, that this is a team that, if it comes together as a cohesive unit, can be a really good basketball program in easily the toughest conference in college basketball.
Sure.
And I think that that's the biggest storyline for me this year has been not only the injuries to Robbie Carmody and Rex Pfluger, but also the inconsistency of nights like this when TJ Gibbs, 23 points, he was on fire from 3. And then you got John Mooney with only his second game without a double-double in ACC play.
And he still put up 16 points and 9 rebounds.
But
So it wasn't like he had a terrible game.
But it's the
himself.
inconsistency of, it doesn't seem to be a night where TJ Gibbs is on and Mooney's on and one of the freshmen makes some plays. It seems like you have a lot of youth and experience with those 3 freshmen who are averaging just a combined 20 points on 35% shooting. And then, maybe Gibbs has an off night and Mooney's back to his, 15 and 15 self. But Notre Dame just hasn't been able to string all of those pieces together to make a real cohesive unit. And I think that's the reason that they sit at, 3-10 in the ACC and not, 6 and 7.
I think that's a good point. And I think another point we have to talk about is the freshmen, because we've seen 3 top 100 freshmen, because you can't count Robbie Carmody. He's out for the rest of the season. And look at Leschewski, Goodwin, and Prentice Hub. And I think out of those 3 players, we've seen one of them who's really made big strides. I think that's Prentice Hub. The other 2, I'm not quite sure we have seen. We've seen flashes from Dane Goodwin. There have been some games when Leschewski shot pretty well, but he seems to just be a spot-up shooter right now. So I'm not quite sure what we're seeing out of the other 2. I do think that a lot of fans have some hope with Prentice Hub moving forward that he's going to be a really good point guard.
I really like all 3 of these guys because I think they offer a lot of different things. I think Nate Leschewski, so tall, he's got a lot of length, and he really can body up with some bigger guys on defense. But you're right, I think offensively he's definitely a spot-up shooter, and he needs to get more consistent at knocking down those threes. I think Dane Goodwin, the thing that's impressed me the most about him is he's never looked scared. Even as a freshman coming in with limited playing time, every time he's on the court, he doesn't seem to shy away from a challenge. He likes to drive to the basket. He's very, very adept at passing the ball and finding good looks. And then you see Prentice Hub, who's a very good ball handler. I think that Notre Dame hasn't had a guy who can run the point position, play point guard the way that Prentice Hub does. I think it's been a long time since they've had a guy like that. So I think if those 3 guys can grow and come together, which I think Mike Bray does such a good job of doing, I'm really excited for what they'll be doing next year.
I think the big point on Prentice Hub, too, is we saw him earlier this season. We saw him especially late December into maybe the middle of January, and his shooting, to put it lightly, was just not good. He was a 20% shooter from three-point distance. He was shooting 27%, I believe it was, from the field overall. And he's picked up in a big way. His three-point shooting is back towards close to 40%, and that's exactly what Notre Dame needs. And if he can continue to do that moving forward into next season, if he can continue to put up 6, 7 assists a game, he put up 9, I believe it was, versus Wake Forest. If he can continue to do that and he can continue to shoot the ball well, they've got a really, really good point guard on their hands.
5 games left for the Fighting Irish in ACC play, including this Saturday. Virginia Tech comes into Purcell Pavilion, another one of those Saturday, Monday scheduling wrinkles. And then Notre Dame will travel for Big Monday at Florida State after they take on Virginia Tech this weekend. Then at Louisville, at home against Clemson, that's the last game of the year, and then at home at least, and then at Pitt to round out the rest of the season. So maybe a couple more wins there for the Irish, but certainly the game on Tuesday was a great opportunity to get another one of those ACC wins, and they were not able to do it. All right, last week we introduced you to Paul Farrington, who's a new correspondent on Shamrock Sports, and since Horlander is back here on the set, we decided that we would send Paul out to ask people some interesting questions about things going on in Notre Dame athletics, and we call it our new segment, Sham.
Hi, I'm Paul Farrington, and for this segment called Sham, we have trapped people inside of elevators, and we're going to ask them questions about Notre Dame sports. What do you think of the news of Ian Book declaring for the NFL draft?
I haven't given any thought about it right now.
That's great. I really hope so. I really think he can make it.
Good. Thank you. Okay, so Mike Bray announced today that following the season, he's going to accept the job at UCLA, the new head coaching vacancy, and we're just getting some student reaction.
Good for him if that's the right move for him. It's his family, professionally,
I hope to God he messages me. I've been in the library since yesterday morning, so I wouldn't know anything about this, but if it's true, I'd be pretty damn sad.
After this season, so at least we can finish off this. This has been a good year.
Okay, you told that to Rex.
Oh.
Yeah, I
It's good that you're taking a positive view on this. That's right. Bonnie Colson, he decided he's coming back for a year. What do you think?
Is he?
Instant reaction. What do you think?
Hell yeah.
Yes, right?
All right, Paul, thanks a lot. We're going to test a little bit of the knowledge about the students have about Notre Dame athletics. So just be prepared. If you see Paul running around with a microphone, and Rooney, you filmed that for him, right? So if you see Paul and Rooney running around,
Be very afraid.
Yes.
Be very afraid.
Just speak at your own risk, I suppose. It's been a tale of 2 different teams on the men's and women's side for Notre Dame basketball. The women's basketball team, despite a few hiccups here and there, still one of the powerhouses in the country, and they picked up a huge win at home against Duke yesterday. 89-61 was the final score. Let's get right to the highlights because this was a huge night, as you alluded to in the open, for Arike Agumbawale. But here early, Jessica Shepard finds Brianna Turner underneath to get things started. Turner tied her season high with 21. And there's Arike. A couple of threes from her. More from her a little bit later. She breaks the scoring record for the Irish. And then here the defense leads to the offense, leads to the ball movement. Jessica Shepard gets the bucket for the Fighting Irish. Haley Gorecki attempting to drive on Brianna Turner. That was a bad idea.
Gorecki had a great game, though.
More great ball movement from the Irish. Arike inside to Jess Shepard, who finds the cutty Abby Prohaska, the freshman from Ohio. And then Arike intercepts the pass, takes it across midcourt. Free throw line J, automatic. How many times have we seen that?
Enough to really surpass her as the all-time leading scorer. She beat Skylar Diggins, who's, in my opinion, definitely one of the best players to ever wear that jersey for Notre Dame.
Jessica Shepard around 2 defenders, and then end of the first half. As you see the putback there. Arike gets her own miss as the clock winds down, is able to put it off the glass just before the, what is with Arike Agumbawale and at the end of the half or the game?
And I'll actually tell you, that was a big point in the game because Duke was on a 12-0 run coming into that point.
Nice pass from Jess Shepard to Marina Mabry, and then Jackie Young, pretty move to put the cap on the big home win for the Irish as Arike Agumbawale surpasses Skylar Diggins as Notre Dame's all-time leading scorer, 2,371 points. Diggins with 2,357. 3 Irish players score over 20 last night in the win. And Notre Dame, after losing a few games early, has rattled off 4 straight. The last time they lost was February 7th at Miami, and they have played extremely well after that game, 89-61 last night against Duke. But how about Arike Agumbawale? That's the major takeaway out of this game. And Skylar Diggins, for all the fanfare she received, she's a hometown favorite, grew up, went to high school in South Bend. Everyone loved her, and she got a ton of publicity. Arike Agumbawale has put together an incredible career, and maybe not as much notoriety as Skylar Diggins, but let's be frank, she deserves it.
I think the big comparison to make between the two, Notre Dame has always been right there at the precipice of greatness in the women's basketball world, and Arike really took them over the edge and won that national championship for them last year. Yeah. But you look at what Skylar Diggins was able to do on that team. They beat Connecticut from her sophomore to senior year 7 out of 8 times they played, and that's something that ever since Skylar Diggins has left, the Connecticut Huskies have really dominated Notre Dame. There's only been 1 win since Skylar Diggins left, and it was that game in the tournament last year. And so I think that the big 2 points of comparison are Skylar Diggins and that Notre Dame team, from 2012, 2013, really knew how to beat the Connecticut Huskies, which was the big boogeyman of the age. And then now Arike Agumbawale has really taken Notre Dame along. I mean, this is such a talented team. I think Arike deserves so much credit for how talented she is, but this is such a good team overall. But they've really come over the edge to be one of the elite, if not the best team in women's basketball right now.
I think they are. If you look at who the players on this roster between Agumbawale, Shepard, Young, Mabry, and Turner, that starting 5 is outstanding. But going back to the point about Agumbawale passing Skylar Diggins, I think the other important note here, it's not going to be close by the time they're said and done. Notre Dame has 2 more games left, and after that they've got 3 games left in the ACC tournament, followed by 5 more, up to 5 more in the NCAA tournament. Notre Dame could have 10 games left on their schedule. Agumbawale puts up about 20 a game. She could pass Diggins by 200 points.
She finished with 25 last night in the win over Duke. Jessica Shepard had 24. Brianna Turner had 21. And the Irish are looking really good heading down the stretch. 2 more regular season games at Syracuse, and then they wrap up on March 3rd at home against Virginia. So 2 pretty winnable games for the Notre Dame women's basketball team as they look to go back-to-back. And what we've seen in the women's basketball landscape this year, it's not going to be easy. And Notre Dame has struggled a little bit more in the ACC than we thought they would. And you made the point a few weeks ago, Austin, that when you look around women's basketball this year, there are probably 5 or 6 teams at the top that could legitimately win this thing.
I think that number goes up to 10 or 11. I think that this is the most competitive season in women's basketball in recent history. Yeah. And Notre Dame at ranking 5th, I think Notre Dame is talent-wise, the best or one of the best teams in the country. But Baylor, Oregon, Connecticut, and Louisville, these 4 teams ranked ahead of them, are also in the conversation for being the best team in the country. And Notre Dame right now projected to be a 2 seed because of those losses to Carolina and to Miami. But going down the stretch in the ACC tournament, we're going to see another matchup between the Louisville Cardinals and Notre Dame in that ACC championship game. They're going to be playing for a 1 seed. So, and I think it's very important because the loser of that game is probably going to be the 2 seed in Connecticut's bracket. So, I mean, there's a lot on the line down the stretch here for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
There is. I think it's also important to note, though, while I understand your point and I agree that it's a lot more competitive this year, I think Notre Dame and UConn, by the time the tournament comes around, will still be head and shoulders above them. They won't be the number 1 seed and the number 2 overall seeds. They won't be that. But what they will be are teams with much more experience than everybody else and also much more talent than everybody else. Despite the fact I didn't think Notre Dame was going to beat UConn earlier this season, I'll tell you this much. Notre Dame is a more talented team than UConn is, and Notre Dame is the most talented team in the country this year. You don't see any other starting 5 in women's college basketball like the starting 5 for Notre Dame, and they are an extremely dangerous team right now. I think Notre Dame is going to win or going to at least get to the finals and play UConn. I'm not sure if they end up taking that win. But then again, I think that this UConn team and Notre Dame team are the only 2 teams that have the type of experience to get to the finals and really win this thing, because I don't think these other teams, despite the fact that they've been able to knock off some teams like Notre Dame and UConn, they're not going to be able to do it consistently enough to find ways to win the tournament.
Irish moved to 25-3 on the season with a win over Duke, 89-61. Before we talk a little bit more about the ACC basketball picture at large and what happened on Monday night with Duke and Carolina, Wednesday with Duke and Carolina, there's this new league, football league called the AAF. And if you haven't heard of it, it's sort of trying to be the minor league for the NFL. And their season began just a week after the Super Bowl, and there are a few Notre Dame players, former Notre Dame players, that are putting on the pads for some of these obscure teams around the country. So before he came back this week on the set, we had Horlander get the update on some of the Irish players in the AAF.
Hey, there's Shamrock Sports. Hey, there's Shamrock Sports. You know what? I just thought it might be better. Like, the video was great. The video, I put a lot of time into the video. But, you know, I'm here. Why? You just want to hear from me now. 8 Notre Dame players in the AAF. The Alliance for American Football is my new it's my new passion in life. It's my new goal. It is the most exciting football I think I've ever seen in the spring. The first football
in
we've
the
ever
spring.
seen. We've ever seen in the
Exactly
spring.
right.
It's so exciting. It's new. It's fresh. You can pick your favorite team. I'm an Arizona Hotshots diehard. Been a fan since day one.
You're a homer is what you are.
And so I think that, you know, if you miss football as much as I do, you got to pay attention to the AAF because it's super exciting. It's just a bummer that all my hard work on that video just couldn't come through.
Well, your video played just about as well as the AAF has in the past couple of weeks. So they've had a tough go around.
Okay. I have heard there are some decent rule changes we've seen with the AAF. I think that there's a referee up in the press box.
So
who can make
there
calls.
are no kickoffs.
The sky ref.
So there are no kickoffs, which is an effort to increase the safety of the game. And there is a lot of transparency with the officiating. You can actually go back and reverse a penalty that was called that should have been called, or vice versa. There's a lot of
Saints are wishing they had that.
Oh gosh, it's too soon for some of our friends from New Orleans. But that's all I have to say about the AAF. I just had to get that out there.
Are you able to add
the
multiple penalties onto another? So you have a holding and like a personal foul on the offense. Can you move them back 25 yards, or is that not allowed
I don't
yet?
think so. I think that's not really in the spirit of the game. But you know, we're feeling it out, and I want all of our fans here on Shamrock Sports to just come along this journey with me. All 8 of our fans to come along this journey with me in the Alliance.
And
for
that
American
is
Football.
including our parents. So like maybe 2 of our fans.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. If you're watching out there. Me personally, I'm a San Diego Fleet guy. Kind of like the name, and well, they're not very good. unlike you, Horlander read the rankings before the season began, and he
False.
picked the best team,
Categorically
which
false.
is the Arizona Hotshots. So,
I will say, I did not choose a team, and I am proud to say
you gotta pick a
I have
team.
no.
This is a total lie. Right before the show, he told me how much he loves the Orlando Apollos.
I
that
didn't
his
even
favorite
know
team,
their names.
His
All
favorite
right.
position in football is the punter,
No,
and Ben
no.
Turk, former Notre Dame player.
he seems like a Birmingham Iron type guy.
I don't know, man.
Talk about
He
grit.
told me Orlando right before the show.
Talk about grit, but the Birmingham Iron, they have it. All right, moving on from the AAF, let's talk a little bit more about the ACC men's basketball picture at large here. But before we do that, huge game on Wednesday night. How big in Cameron Indoor Stadium? So big that the former president showed up. Barack Obama was sitting courtside to watch UNC and Duke go at it. Unfortunately, the player that everyone came to see, Zion Williamson, got injured in the first 33 seconds of the game. He blew his knee out after trying to make it cut, and then he just went right through his shoot. Not a great look for Nike. Duke's a Nike school. So is UNC, although UNC is a Jordan brand school. A little bit of difference there. So could be some interesting rivalries there. But UNC picks up the win 88-72 on the road against Duke. Zion's injury notwithstanding, UNC played an incredible game.
Yeah, and I think that was something that became a secondary storyline throughout that game was how well North Carolina just dismantled Duke. I mean, put up 90 points against the best team in the country. And with or without Zion, Duke is the best team in the country. That team is
R.J.
so
Barrett actually
talented.
is a more prolific scorer than Zion is.
That team is so talented top to bottom. And Mike Krzyzewski, obviously, one of the best, if not the best coach in college basketball. And the way North Carolina just came in to Durham, North Carolina, and absolutely obliterated Duke is something that cannot be understated.
Yeah, I think it's just important to state, how amazing Zion Williamson's athleticism is. When he came to Notre Dame, I was still a little bit skeptical. I had not watched that much of Zion Williamson's play. I knew he was one of the best players in the ACC. He was second in double-doubles behind John Mooney at the time. He was one of the leading scorers, and we'd seen all these numbers from him, but to actually see him in person and see what he did to John Mooney, taking the ball out of his hands in the middle of a dunk, and there was a potential goaltending call. I don't remember who shot the ball, but he had an incredible steal and block at the same time. His athleticism is something I don't think we've seen in college basketball maybe ever or in an extremely long time.
Yeah, he's pretty much, he's a unicorn, as you mentioned, and he's just so much fun to watch. So it's unfortunate that he'll be out. He's listed as day today. It's a grade 1 knee sprain, I think is what the official injury was. And so we'll see when he comes back for the Blue Devils. They certainly missed him in that game, but that's not why they lost, because that team was more than talented enough to beat UNC, especially at home. The two teams will play again in Chapel Hill in about a week or so. All right, let's talk about the weekend, and we'll go through and pick some of these games. UVA at Louisville. This is a really, really good matchup. Louisville team under Chris Mack has put together a good season. Who do you have?
You know what? I'm going to go with the Cardinals purely because the way that Chris Mack has turned this Louisville program around, a Louisville team that was in turmoil after all of the scandals with Rick Pitino and the athletic director Jurich. But it's so tough to go into the KFC Yum Center and win ball games. And I think Louisville has an explosive enough offense to take care of Virginia and put up enough points to beat them.
Louisville was beaten last weekend by a significant margin. I don't see them coming back and taking over and beating a team like Virginia, who's one of the best teams in the country. So I have Virginia in this one pretty easily.
Boston College and Clemson at Clemson, South Carolina. The Eagles or the Tigers?
It would be wrong of me to pick Boston College. I'm going to go Clemson purely on morality alone.
Yeah, I'm going Clemson too. I don't think that Boston College is a good basketball program at all, and I think that they will lose pretty badly to Clemson.
Georgia Tech goes on the road against Miami.
Georgia Tech, Ramblin' Wreck.
All right.
I'm going Georgia Tech.
Florida State at North Carolina. Sneaky game for the Tar Heels at home.
Yeah, top 15 matchup. I think North Carolina's riding the high of that Duke game. I got a lot of confidence they're going to pull out another win this weekend.
Yep, UNC.
Duke goes on the road against Syracuse after losing to UNC. Who do you have?
I think the Blue Devils are going to bounce back. I mean, R.J. Barrett, I think, is going to take over this one. He's going to have the spotlight. Zion Williamson will not be playing, but he'll be there supporting the Blue Devils, and I think they're going to have a big win.
Duke will win again.
Virginia Tech coming into Purcell Pavilion tomorrow at 4 p.m. You taking the Irish in this one?
You know what? I will take the Irish because in the first ACC game of the season, they played the Hokies in Blacksburg, Virginia. They played pretty well.
Upset alert, Notre Dame takes the win.
Do they get the win at Florida State on Monday?
Yes.
Very quickly.
I think that one's tougher. I don't think they can pull that one out on the road.
Yes.
We'll see how it happens. We'll break it all down next week, next Friday on Shamrock Sports. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great weekend.
All night, babe, make me wanna say, la 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 la.